Hi, James. Hi, everybody. Good to see the room filling up nicely this morning. Just to give you a little bit of indication as we're just getting underway. We're joined today by an amazing crowd of registrations so far. We've got a huge, well over 200 people registered for this session, which is fantastic to see. And the real spread, as you might expect, lots of people working in the tanker trade, but we have people, owners, ship representing ship managers. We've also got a lot of bulk carrier companies in, and even a couple of cruise companies, which is fantastic because, as you will find out in the course of today, competency management is for everyone. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Raal Harris. I'm Chief Creative Officer here at Ocean Technologies Group, so I deal with a lot of the marketing, what we do, and the outreach to the industry. And so I'm very privileged to be joined today by some of the companies that I work with, either as customers or as external organizations that we work closely with. And we'll get into those introductions in a moment. But first of all, just a little bit of an introduction really to the topic and why we're going to talk about it. Competency management is something that I'm really passionate about, because when I look at a lot of the challenges that we have as an industry, a lot of it comes back to having a really structured approach to how we deal with the skills of our people and their knowledge, and really manage their proficiencies and to give them the confidence to do the jobs that they want to do, and just generally raise the standards and quality of what we do. So, James, if we could go to the next slide, I'll give everyone a bit of an idea of what to expect in the course of today. So we're going to talk about CMS and the role that it plays in safety and performance. We're going to talk about how to implement that effectively with regard to inspections, things like PSC, TMSA, SIA2, performance, those kind of aspects. Really important aspect of it as well. We're going to talk about CMS and the role that it plays within career development. And then we'll try and share some best practices and tips for success. And last of all, but by no means least, try to answer some of the questions that you have. Any questions that you do ask are recorded in the system. So should we not get around to answering some of those, we always make a point of going through those and trying to connect them up to you on those afterwards. So without further ado, let's get stuck into this topic this morning and introduce to you the speakers that will be joining me to sort of share ideas, best practice, and so forth. So let me start off by introducing a good friend of mine, Mr. Frans Ubaghs. Frans, could you give us a quick introduction to yourself and to INTERTANKO?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Raal, for the opportunity. That doesn't work. Never mind. My name is Frans Ubaghs. I'm vetting manager at INTERTANKO and deputy marine director. For those who do not know INTERTANKO is an association of ship owners, roughly 175 members. Is a member organization. They own, or in the fleet, if you want, of INTERTANKO, about 3,700 ships. What is important to note is that INTERTANKO membership tries to lead continuous improvement. We have very important in our goals is 0 fatalities, 0 pollutions, 0 detentions. We are a forum where members meet each other, they share information, they share best practices. We are also an advisor, providing guidance on issues which affect our members. And last but not least, we are champions in we speak and act on behalf of the independent tanker owners, be it on IMO and other forums. Very important is that the work, the core work of INTERTANKO is done by the members themselves. We have committees, 14 committees, with in the center actually the human element in shipping committee, whom developed the ICMG, the INTERTANKO competency management guidance, also together with OCIMF, the BCAP, the behavioral competency assessment and verification. So that's a bit what the topic of the day is. And that's it for me.
Yeah, thanks, Frans, and we'll definitely pick into some of those points as we go through the session today. Next up, John Reid from Seapeak. John, do you want to just give us a quick introduction to yourself and to Seapeak?
Sure, thanks, Raal. Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone across the world. My name is John Reid. On completion of a long career in the military, around 28 years, I joined what was then TKLNG back in 2019, where I'm the training and recruitment manager. And basically my role as training and recruitment manager, I'm responsible for all seafarer training, all recruitment, including cadet programs, and of course management of the competency management system. And I work with a team of 4 across the Glasgow and Manila offices here at Seapeak. So a bit about Seapeak. We were rebranded to Seapeak early in 2022. And in terms of global presence, we have around 300 staff ashore with offices in Glasgow, Singapore, Copenhagen, Vancouver, Manila and Madrid. We have around 2,600 seafarers serving on board a fleet of 37 LNG carriers and 16 LPG vessels. We also operate a LNG terminal in the Kingdom of Bahrain. Our cadet programme currently has around 150 cadets from 12 nations. And on that topic, we are a very multinational company with over 40 nationalities of seafarer represented at sea. And that's it for the moment from me.
Wow, that's impressive, and a lot on your shoulders there, John, and with lots of experience to draw from. And I know from the discussions that we've had together that's there's lots of good learning that you can bring to this session today. So thank you very much for joining. Next up is Andy Easdown, who's our own maritime consultant here with us at Ocean Technologies Group. Andy, I can't actually see your face at the moment. Are you actually there?
I am transmitting. I'm just seeing myself. So
good.
Other people can see me.
Over to you, Andy.
Yes, thanks. Yes, hello everyone, and same offer my thanks to Raal for the opportunity to speak with you all, and a little bit about my background. This is my hard to believe it, but it's my 49th year. I completed 48 years in September in the maritime industry. Started as a young lad as an apprentice. I had a very enjoyable career with Lloyd's Register, also 28 years before moving to Shell. During my time in Lloyd's Register, I had a number of different positions. I ended up as the Marine Training Manager, and one of the responsibilities was to introduce competence management system for surveyors. Similarly, while I was in Shell, there was an introduction of a competency management system there, and it was essentially designed to be a company-wide scheme. So it encompassed both shore-based staff, the seafarers, the whole idea being to encourage the correct competencies, the right kind of competencies throughout the company to improve safety standards and performance, but also to engage and encourage people to be responsible for their own career development. And one of the elements of that was preparing people to come to shore-based roles. So that was a very interesting experience. And then during my time now with OTG, which has been quite some time actually, Raal, when I look back, of course, I've been involved in the competence management schemes that are being run by Ocean Technology Group, and also the evaluation schemes as well. And so it's been very interesting to see it from that side and how that works.
Great, thanks, Andy. A wealth of experience, and we will dig into a lot of that today. So, James, I think let's get into the discussion now. So I think we can lose the screen now. We know who everybody is, so we can see people's faces a little bit more clearly. There we go. The first thing I'd like to get into today is, like, really, we've got a lot of people here. There's a lot of interest, but why should people be really interested in competency management? Why is it important? And really, why is it? John, I'd like to start with you on this one, because obviously you've invested a lot of time, effort, energy into CMS. So why do you think CMS is important, and why is it important to Seapeak as well? I think you might be muted.
Okay, there we go. Sorry about that. Get the basics done. So firstly ever, CMS was initially introduced and approved by DNV in April 2004. So we're now on 20 years of successful operations using a CMS. But why is it important? It provides a straightforward and uncomplicated framework of competencies, appraisals, promotion requirements, and training. In a multinational company such as ours, especially when national curriculums across the globe differ so much, it's important that we have a standard onboard learning and development process which all seafarers, regardless of nationality, can relate to and follow. Another reason why we see it as an important tool for customers conducting due diligence, either for our continued services or for new business. The question of competence and having competent people, i.e. safe people, is a constant in these questionnaires. And quite simply, having a CMS that is certified by a reputable organisation like DNV can be a real differentiator in these talks and applications.
So would I be right in thinking that the CMS kind of, in a sense, is not only providing the kind of the ability to manage that and to get that consistency, but also creating the evidence which you can then get audited by DNV and can then share with customers and that kind of thing? Do I understand that correctly?
That's exactly what I'm saying, yes.
Yeah.
It's almost like a approval stamp.
Yeah, and I think that consistency piece in a multinational environment is something that comes up certainly in conversations with me all the time, because as you say, from the different national administrations, the education systems in those, but of course different levels of basic learning and understanding that you find in those as well. So yeah, thank you for setting the scene there, John. Frans, obviously coming to you now, when we talk about like OCIMF, INTERTANKO, these are organizations that have invested a lot of time, effort and energy into competency management and into creation of specific standards, which I hope we'll get to as well. But can you explain to us why you think, why sort of from an INTERTANKO perspective, why competency management is an area of interest?
Well, yeah, thank you, Raal. And if you look at the last 50 years, where specifically the tanker industry is coming from. The 70s of last century, I have to say, where there were a lot of accidents, incidents, and we get better and better in this industry, in the tanker industry specifically. If you look at the first, say, 20 years or so, a lot of focus on technical improvements. Then, say, in the beginning of the 2000s, we came with the ISM code, with the TMSA, really into the management of systems. And we must be honest, the tanker industry has done a fantastic job, and everybody has been a part of that one. But if you look at the last 10 years or so, still, although we are still doing a very good job, and tanker industry has really good record. The zeros, which I mentioned before, the zero accidents, we are not there yet. So everybody started to look in, what is it where we have to improve? And then you come automatically, let's say, in the human factors, the human element. How can we make the industry better? If you look at all the incidents in the past couple of years, it's easy to come up with, that's one of the contributing factors is the human element or the human factor, which does not mean that seafarers are not performing well, because they all have their certificates. STCW is setting the standards there. But it's these last bits and pieces where we say, what is it? Where can we get better in this industry? Yeah. And actually discovered that it's the competency, it's not necessary. Nobody wants to make a mistake. Everybody wants to do his best, and still accidents are happening. So if we can find out where are really the problems at this moment, and you can say go specifically in the competency of the seafarers, people coming with new technologies, with new regulations, how can we bring the seafarers, especially the seafarers, but also operators, to the standards which are needed to go to zero incidents? That's where the competency management came into, and that's why both OCIMF and INTERTANKO have invested a lot in research and trying to frame the competency, because it's very important to have a framework where the competency fits into, let's say.
Yeah, thanks, Frans. And we will come back to all of those things. Lots of stuff to unpick in there. There's a fantastic diagram, actually, that I've seen OCIMF do, where they sort of show how the safety control measures, everything was kind of bringing it down, and then the stubborn bit at the end. And I think that, which is really about the people and making sure that people are able to kind of perform to the best of their abilities. And I think it's an interesting one from Andrew Roberts from RightShip said on a presentation I saw back in Posidonia, where he said, we talk about people as being, that human element problem, but if people are the problem, they're also the solution. And I think we should also remember the number of incidents that are probably avoided by people as much as there are incidents caused by people and stuff. And so it's working on that, looking at those competencies. We're going to talk some of the behavioral competencies as well. We'll come back to that because I think that's a really key point as well. But I think before we go much further, Andy, I think you and I were talking about this, and I think it's an area that a lot of people don't necessarily kind of appreciate and understand. What is different about a competency management system than, say, a sort of a general e-learning approach that is perhaps more widely used, or not necessarily learning, but what's different about a competency management? And James, we've got a slide which we sort of put together to kind of help sort of talk to that, and we can obviously share that if people find it useful as well. But Andy, over to you. Yes,
thanks, Raal. Very interesting to hear the comments there from John and from Frans, because a lot of the competencies are based, of course, on training and development. So if you like to think of that's a starting point. So for a lot of companies, that's the focus is around having a proper training system in place and having a number of courses for people to do and so on, and to meet their sort of the mandated requirements of refresher training and so on. But competencies goes a lot further than that, because that's actually about generating skill and having proficiency at a task. So that's really quite the major difference between the systems. I don't know if you could pick that slide up, James, if you could, that would help perhaps just to demonstrate that difference. So so there we are. We're saying about a learning management system, important to have one, of course, but it's generally about training delivery and management, whereas competence management systems are really about that skill and competency development. And actually comes back exactly to what you were saying there, John, when you were saying about it. You're having a program or a process which is, if you like, your company system, the one that you want. So, as you say, you bring this group of diverse people together. They've got a range of skills, a range of abilities. And what you're trying to do is you're trying to focus them to perform at the standard that you wish them to perform at within your company. And of course, that's got a number of goals. It's excellent for safety, for making sure that people actually are proficient in what they're doing. You have that opportunity for development for people from, if you like, the personalized development plans. You can show them the route. That's one of the really beneficial things of a competency management scheme. It's very clear to them what they've got to do to progress to the next level. And of course, that's one of the key factors in a competency management system is actually doing those kind of appraisals on people, looking at their performance, making sure that they are aware of the gaps and where they can improve, and also to highlight to them where they're doing exceedingly well. You know, that's mustn't look at it as just a sort of negative thing about you know you're not doing this or you're not doing that. There'll be elements where some people are actually ahead for the particular rank that they're in at the moment. Competency management systems highlight all of that and help people to understand. And then you get this alignment across the workforce. Everybody's talking the same language. That's one of the other key elements of a competency management system. You're able to talk about something and everybody knows what you mean. You're not having to sort of go around spending a lot of time explaining or helping people to understand. So, and then of course align that with your business goals, and you have a very powerful tool to achieve the overall performance you wish as a company.
Yeah, I think that, you know, great comments, Andy, coming back to that consistency theme, I think, as well, but also that when you're looking at the human enablement piece that Frans was talking about as well. And I think one of the things that I like personally about competency management is that it brings in sort of lots of different aspects. So it's not just sort of a digital e-learning record of someone passing a CBT test. It's also looking, as you said, the appraisals fit into that, sort of actual real world tasks can fit into that as well. You can kind of capture much more of the richness of what goes on into a learning experience. I think we can lose that slide now, James, thanks. But I want to get into then the ingredients of what really makes up a CMS, and maybe if I could come back to you, John, and what do you think, what are the main components that you need to make the CMS kind of work?
What I would say is that ingredients-wise, you know, a comprehensive appraisals process, a competency profile that's relevant to each rank, fair and achievable promotion pathway. But in order for us to provide the structure, we also need to have the support around that to make it possible for the seafarers to make those steps. Things like assessor training, mentoring, safe working conditions, career development and guidance, the correct training opportunities and support. All those things thrown into the pot make a good and workable competency management system. And
yeah, lots of different things you mentioned in there as well. Is that and obviously you can do it. You could do it on a spreadsheet if you wanted to, but you use the digital CMS that we have. And why do you do that? You know, what's the advantage to having a sort of a digital CMS, if I can ask?
There's several advantages. It keeps everything in one place. It's accessible for the seafarers, both on board and on leave. But I must highlight competencies are available when on board. E-learning is available on board, but only e-learning is available when they're on leave. But it's still an important tool for us to have. And in the future, we're going to include the appraisals in the same tool. So it'll just be a one-stop shop for everything, which just makes everything streamlined, accessible, and much more simpler to operate.
Yeah, and I'm guessing as well, this is using the Ocean Learning platform that we have, which has this competency management component to it. Also, creating that sort of digital record, I'm imagining, is probably kind of a helpful thing as well. So you can actually see where people are in the different.
Most definitely, and you know, we conduct CMS audits, as the chaps mentioned earlier. TMSA is an important tool. So whenever we're being audited, we're being inspected, the OLP is the one-stop shop to provide that, demonstrate that proof that, you know, our seafarers are understanding the system. Yeah, great. Just coming back to that, so we've got you talked about some of the sort of many different aspects of it there, but I want to sort of zoom into the standards a little bit as well, the sort of competencies themselves, because we'll kind of get into maybe sort of wait to kind of talk about all the individual ones. But if you imagine the approach that you take to the competency management now, it's really that those competencies that you write, that framework that you put together, there's no hard fast rules, are there, to that? There's guidance provided, and Frans, I'll ask you to talk about the ones that you've been involved in a second.
But you can have company specific ones. You can use sort of some of those industry guidance. But just Andy, maybe if you could just give us some color on what those sort of look like as a sort of competencies or proficiencies, they're sometimes called, aren't they? What do you need from those to work? You know.
Well, the main thing is that they need to be specific. They need to be measurable. It's almost like objectives, really. You know, the SMART sort of acronym in a way. So it's interesting hearing what John was saying there about the appraisal system as being at the root of it and so on. And part of the difficulty is if you don't have anything very clearly defined what you're measuring against, you know, how do you get consistent appraisals? And so it's important that the competencies that you use and you measure against are clearly defined, and they've got an actual observable outcome. So, and this is something that's the root of all competence management systems, whether it's TMSA or it's a company system or whatever. And then you have the assessment side of it as well. And again, unless you have very clear about what you're trying to measure, it's hard for the assessors. You know, it comes down to, if you like, whether they like the person or whether they think they're a good bloke or not, or woman, but perhaps. So you need that objectivity within them. And then, so within, a typical example is navigation competency, for example. You want to know that people are doing the following the correct processes, that they're aware of the regulations and the requirements, that they're actually applying them correctly. So when they actually work out, for example, a passage plan, do they apply those principles correctly? And that's something very specifically that you can look at. Are they following company processes and procedures, for example? So you can measure and you can see, have they actually applied them? Are they aware of them? Do they understand them? Have they challenged them if they don't actually make sense? You know, all these things. And you will then have a very clear and objective set of measures, and you can say, yes, you know, this person does understand this part. They do actually apply it in the process. When I look at the, if you like, the results of what they've done or what they do, I can see that they've applied these correctly. So it's those kind of elements that are really important. Yeah. And you mentioned before, and I just briefly bring it up at this point, that the behaviours that go with that are really, really important as well. In fact, one of the things I would say we probably innately recognise, we see it in people and we think that is a capable person. And you think, well, what is it that, you know, enables you to make that decision? And it's not just the fact that they're technically competent, it's that they can communicate it, that they actually demonstrate it as well. So the behaviours are really an important part of that, because they are actually the way that you can just physically see that people are able to do the role. Yeah.
Thanks, Andy. And you've teed us up nicely to go over to Frans, because you mentioned two things in there. One, you talked about some navigational competencies there, technical skills. Then you started talking about behaviour. So I think, and we sort of led into this from like sort of, you know, where do you start? How do you write good competencies? That kind of thing. Two publications come out from INTERTANKO, one of which joint publication with OCIM, ICMG, BCAV. Frans, do you want to just give us a bit of an idea of what's in there? And
yeah, sure. Sure. So the ICMG is, like I said before, people are well trained. They have their certificates, STCW certificates. There are the guidelines available. The ICMG is looking at the technical skills. 72 competencies, I think, all brought down on critical operations on board. Like already Andy said, navigation is one of them, engineering, cargo operations, and mooring. All based on incidents which happened before. Absolutely right, saying that they must be measurable. So it's all drilled down. It's very handy too. If, as an operator, you want to start somewhere, you should not go immediately to start with competency number 1 and go through 72, that will be much too complicated. You can really choose one of these. Now, what we did with OCIMF on the behavioral competencies, that was like, if I have my technical knowledge, my technical competencies, what the behavioral competencies on board, here again, looked at how can this be drilled down and measured and defined. 6 competencies actually, which we defined. Team working, communication, of course, influencing, very important. Situational awareness is one of them. So it's really then decision making, result focus, and there's another one. Oh yeah, leadership, of course. So really drill this down to very specific behavioral competencies, where also an assessor can be trained on how to assess these. So instead of one word competency, both INTERTANKO and OCIMF have tried to define all these things, that it's easy for a company, for an operator to say, where do I start with my competency? How can I measure this? And I know we all say that you need commitment from the top. I think in this competency management systems, you need commitment from the bottom. You have to try to get the seafarers on board. Like Andy said, it's important for them to see, hey, I am good in this. Hey, I can a bit improve in another competency, but I can do this. So it's very important to start from there, I think. And that's why I say, don't be overwhelmed by competency, but start with very simple tools, let's say, like we have them now.
Yeah. Thanks, Frans. And that was.
Could I just add a little bit there as well? Sorry, Raal, about that. That really is an important point, Frans, about getting the buy-in from people in the company, because otherwise, what it can seem like is this is an imposition from the shore crowd. Oh, this is another thing that we've got to do. We've got appraisals. Now we've got this competency management system as well. They don't realize the workload that we're under. They're just pushing this onto us, rather than seeing it as the other way around. Actually, this is really good for me because this is excellent for my career development. This is showing me the pathway, how I can succeed, where I can get to. So yeah, that's really the point I just wanted to emphasize there.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think we will get into the careers side of it, I think, and that seafarer buy-in thing. And I mean, I think it's really important. The other thing is, I think we maybe didn't spend enough time on it when we talked about the ingredients, because John, you mentioned it, Frans just mentioned it then. The role of the assessor really can't be overlooked, I think, within this, and really making sure that you can get people feel comfortable making that, particularly with things like behavioural competence. But that's a kind of I don't want to get into that because we won't get time to talk about anything else. The next thing I want to talk about really is just about the motivation for doing it. The careers thing is a really strong one, and I want to kind of get to that. Before we get into that, because there is a question on this, and we will deal with questions at the end, I promise, but there is one that's sort of timely in here. So do you know any customer interested party that urges owners to have a CMS in place? I'm not asking for recommendations. Okay, fine. But I think that's the questions. Like, why would you do this kind of thing from the kind of external point of view? Now, we've got things like port state control inspections, we've got TMSA audits, we've got SIRE inspections. From that sort of lens, and obviously RightShip for those dry bulk customers that are here as well, and dry cargo. What's the sort of point of a CMS from that point of view? John, I don't know if you've got some thoughts on that, because you're someone who has to provide that sort of quality assurance to your customers. What role does it play in that space, you think?
We have regular, as you say, port state control, SIRE inspections, etc. And I think you might have had a slide on this, but in terms of benchmarking, we see visible proof that our results sitting in the industry standard are a little bit better than those companies without CMS.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it's directly the result of that, but sorry.
No, I was just going to say I will bring that up in a minute, because I think it's an interesting one, and I think you say it's not a straightforward one. But I think, like, do you feel? Have you ever, to answer the question there, have you ever been aware of anyone who's specifically requested that CMS is in place, or is it just that it provides the quality? They're interested in the quality, and it's something that does that. Or have they?
Yeah, it's almost like the chicken and egg situation. Like I said previously, our CMS has been in place for so long now that I think we're just recognised as a company who operate under, CMS. Whether any company directly, demands that you have one, I can't answer that question. I'm not sure.
But do you feel that it contributes to your ability to be able to, or your team's ability to be able to kind of handle inspections well and that kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. The framework is such that the standard of training across the fleet is high. Inspectors recognise that. We regularly get comments that our seafarers' knowledge of their requirements in terms of tasks on board. We've mentioned the human element, their approach to tasks on board. It's not how does this equipment work, it's do you know how to use this equipment? And the standards are high across the fleet, and we're very proud of that. It's definitely something that helps us.
Good. And Frans, is there any, quite often I'm asked this question about, is there a connection between TMSA and a CMS, for example, or when it comes to sire inspection stuff? Do you see any kind of role for it in there?
Yeah, but sure. For me, the question was very easy to answer because our customers, or the customers of a tanker operator, are the oil majors, let's say, and they are at OCIMF and they develop the BCAF together with us. So they are looking at competency management. It's good that you pick it up again, Raal, and that you organize this webinar, because the BCAF was developed in 2018. The ICMG 2020 or 2021. We all know we had the pandemic, other problems to deal with at that moment. So but we knew already at that time, without having the crystal ball at that time that a pandemic would come, that this would take time to embed in the industry, time to make people realize that this is going to be needed. But definitely in the Sire 2 now, which is launched last month, finally, there is a reference to the BCAF, yes, to behavioral competency. Are the oil majors really looking at it already? If you have it in place, they understand that this all needs time, but they also realize that to make the industry better, this is going to be a very important tool, be it the technical skills, competencies, as well as the behavioral ones, that's for sure.
Yeah, thanks.
If I could just add there as well, Raal. Sorry if it feels like I'm interrupting a lot.
Go for it. That's what you're here for.
As Frans said there, so it's embedded in TMSA. It's mentioned specifically in a couple of locations around the assessment of competence in element 3. In regard to competencies in rank and also in preparation for promotion and so on. It's mentioned in element 5 around navigational officers and masters and their responsibility for navigational safety. So in a sense, if you wish to comply, or sorry, not comply because it's a voluntary arrangement, TMSA, but if you wish to aspire to the higher levels of TMSA, then a competency management system is embedded in it. You have to do it. Otherwise, you can't actually demonstrate your compliance with it. And then Frans mentioned the SIRE 2.0 and the fact that the human element is now such a big part of that. And part of the job of the inspector is to assess the onboard proficiency by using performance influencing factors. So they have a system. They're not doing a full behavioral competency, but in their discussions, which they have with people on board, they're assessing, is this person capable? Do they know what they're doing? And are they familiar with the onboard procedures, processes, systems, etc.? So there's an element there which it's much, if you want to have confidence that your people are able to answer those questions, then a competence management system is the ideal way, the ideal route for that.
And I think that what I would say is, James, if you bring up the data, everyone loves a bit of data, don't they? So I've kind of been looking at this, and I think it's interesting to have a look at. From obviously, we can't see people's SIRE data, we can't see what they do as far as that goes. That's not disclosed. But PSC information is widely available, so we use it a lot to sort of try and see how is our sort of customer cohort doing against. And you can see here, this is sort of like Ocean Learning Platform. So the top line there being we're actually obscuring the bottom line, which is where the detention rates are. But let's not worry too much about the detention side of things. Focus more on the deficiencies themselves that are picked up. And you can see there's a big marked difference between our customer cohort there and the wider industry. Now, again, putting this in context, we're not saying that because they use that, but I think what we know about that cohort is that they all have a structured approach to managing their learning. But if we go to the next slide, that we hit, this is kind of like slicing further into other customers and using different things. And one of the things you can see there is on the right, the assess platform. That's an additional assessment layer, effectively, that they're putting on, which you can use for recruitment, and you can use it as part of your competency management as well. And you see that's got a further kind of bounce, if you like, in terms of reductions. But the biggest one by far is the competency management cohort. And I think that what that's telling you is that it's not necessarily because you've plugged in a CMS that it's made the difference, but it's about the way in which the organization is set up. And that CMS is really kind of indicative of a lot of other things that are being well managed and well put across in the industry there. So you see by far and away the biggest effect on that as far as that data picture goes. We do see that bounce in CMS. And as I said, this is not saying, if you plug in our CMS product, you're going to get that change. It's because it's part of companies that are managing things in that way, and they're doing it in that sort of digital way that enables them to be able to see where they're doing. And that's what that cohort is sort of representing. So I think it's kind of interesting to look at it from that point of view. But if we could lose that slide now and bring in, because I'd like to move the discussion across now. We've not got too much time to spend on it. And I know there's some really good benefits of a CMS, which are relating to the careers thing. And we talked about seafarer buy-in. No better way than to buy into, to your the training and competency that you need to build if you understand the impact that it's having on your career. And John, you've got some interesting things to share with us on that, I think. So, James, if you could bring up the slide that John can talk to there, just help everyone to visualize. I think it's
James, if you could just move along to the engineering. Yeah, that one's much better. What's important to seafarers? Money, promotion, making a better life for their families. That's the bottom line. So here at Seapeak, we have a set career development program. We've got 2 career development officers, one for our deck department and one for our engine. And their role is absolute commitment to ensuring that our seafarers progress through the rank structure and provide that support. So the visual you see, is the career pathway from cadet to chief engineer. And we have a very similar pathway for cadet to captain and also electrical cadet. And what it does, it sets out and shows our seafarers that there's a clear and achievable pathway to the very top rank, with no barriers. The sky's the limit, and it's up to you and your commitment as to how far up that ladder you go. What's required? So calendar experience, credentials, so license, gas endorsement, STCW, then any additional training for the next rank. other stuff is then the important part there, the competencies. So they have to complete their current rank competencies, complete some critical competencies for the next rank, and pass a promotion interview. And that's how simple it is and straightforward. The career development officers, every Monday, they will receive a sign-off report of all the officers who have signed off from each vessel in the previous week. They will read their appraisal, they will mark it, they will add it to their records, they will then arrange a call with the seafarer and have a career discussion. So it's always two-way. The seafarers must know that their career development officers are happy to support them if they want promotion. Not everyone wants promotion, but it's a really good setup in terms of career guidance, support, and a clear pathway to the next rank.
Great. And this is something that's transparent to all your guys and girls there at Seapeak. They know this. You communicate to this, then they understand the benefit to them, do they, on this?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, not every seafarer is the same. You know, what we also see, and we can look into the OLP for this evidence, we can see who the driven officers are, who wants promotion, who wants to get to the next rank. You know, there are seafarers who are happy in their current rank. You know, we can't push them to the next rank, but what they must do is meet those competencies for their rank. You know, they don't have to then proceed to the next rank competencies. As long as they meet the competencies for their current rank, you know, there's no requirement for promotion. But it's when the seafarers start dipping into those critical competencies for the next rank, then we have that visual evidence that, you know, they're driven seafarers perform well. People who perform well perform safely, and everything ties in that way to a good working environment on board.
Yeah, brilliant. And I think, Andy, you've made this point a few times as well. You can kind of see who your stars of tomorrow are, right? With the succession planning, stuff like that. I think John's speaking to that point too.
Yes, exactly. So, for example, in Shell, it's not a secret. They want to develop their own people. They want to bring their own people ashore. That because they're familiar with the way that the company operates and they understand their standards and so on. I'm sure it's the same for Seapeak as well, John.
Yeah.
You want the people that you know, and you've built up this evidence over the years of the capabilities of those people. Then, of course, when you bring people into a shore-based role, you get much more into human resources style management rather than the sort of the straightforward onboard leadership. You know exactly the path that you're going to take. You're all of a sudden asked to do a whole range of different things when you come ashore. I'm sure a lot of ex-masters and chief officers and so on who've come ashore have suddenly felt a little bit like a fish out of water. They're being spoken to by young administrative assistants and so on, and they don't know whether they should respond to that person or is it only their boss they should listen to and so on. So all of a sudden they're sort of exposed to this kind of uncertainty. Competence management systems provide that certainty. They've got the communication skills. They understand about leadership and management. They understand about teamwork. So this is an excellent pathway for people as well. Is you've got these competency systems in place when they come ashore. It's not such a strange world for them. And you have this company-wide view. This is the point. If they're consistent across the company, you can see your top performers. You can see the people who are there. I'd just like to pick up on one point John made about some people are happy in their role. That's clearly the case. Not everyone can be a superstar. Not everyone wants to be a superstar either. But it does enable people. It does help them to understand, well, how do I be the best in my role? So you can have some people who are very happy to be chief officer. They never really want to be the master. They could be a role model as a chief officer in the sense of they actually are the best at that role in the whole of the company.
Just sorry, I'm going to interrupt you now, Andy. But just a couple of things because we've got to get into the questions. I just don't want to lose a couple of points there. One, building people is going to be the way this is going to have to be, right? Because we are finding there's a talent shortage out there. We are going to need to invest in people. If we invest in people, we want to keep them. So this needs to be part of your retention strategy as well, that you understand, people understand there's an investment being made and there's a good future for them. Third point you made there, Andy, which I don't want to overlook. I have lots of conversations with customers now about shore-based competency and building up the shore-based competencies and building that kind of pathway. We have a shortage of superintendents too, by the way. This is something we could all be planning towards with a more human capital management kind of approach. But yeah, lots of other things we could unpick in there. And we could keep this conversation going for hours, but I do want to get in. We have a lot of questions, and I do want to get into those. So if we could lose the slide that we have there. Thank you for sharing that with us, John, as well. So I think it kind of makes it real when we can see that there. But yeah, getting into some of the questions now. And the first one I want to zoom in on is how do you measure the effectiveness of a CMS? And the specific question is from Niraj, is how to measure the effectiveness of CMS. What's the correlation of incidents, near misses, non-conformances, etc.? Probably one for you starting off there, John. What do you look at to measure the effectiveness of the CMS?
We have a competency management committee, and we meet quarterly here in our Glasgow office. It's fairly high level. We'll have fleet manager there, HSEQ manager, competence manager. We'll have other members of the team, and what we'll do, we'll look through the previous quarters, incidents, near misses, identify training gaps, and we will action. We'll look at where we can improve, whether that's issuing a fleet notice, whether it's adding a competence, amending a competence, improving a competence. And basically that's our first kind of port of call when it comes to reviewing on a quarterly basis.
But will you connect up things like HSEQ, looking at kind of incidents, looking at things? Does that go into the discussion about the CMS when you're reviewing?
Yeah, because normally by this point the investigation into any incident has taken place and the root cause has been identified. And if that root cause, which quite regularly relates to a lack of training in one area, then it's very important that we seize that and we action on it quickly.
Mm-hmm. Good. Okay, good. Next question I'm going to go to here is this question from Carl Jeffrey of Tanker Operator magazine. Carl Jeffrey, nice to see you on the one. And this is one for you, I think, Frans. It says the subject of human competency working well with technology. So he's talking about ECDIS, ballast water management systems, alarm systems on board, maintenance software, etc. Is this best addressed in a different way to human competency in general? So I'm going to ask you the question perhaps in a way that I know that INTERTANKO has lots of working groups. How do you feel like looking at this? Technology is moving at a lot of pace. We got a lot of learning to come from ECDIS and what went on there. What's your view on how competency works with that kind of interface with technology?
That's an interesting one.
Do you see a role for it, I suppose, is the first question. Is it part of the competency?
The competency, and I'm sure that John and Andy will agree with me. Your competency management system is not set. That's it, and that's how we have to apply. It's evolving all the time. With incidents happening, you do your assessment, like John says. It's evolving all the time. New technologies bring new competencies with them, etc. So it's not like this is the standard and this has to be done.
Yeah.
Your own competency management have to evolve all the time. And just wanted to come back very shortly on the former question also, how to measure your TMSA, the post-take control, what you just showed, Raal, the results of this one. is a measuring tool which you can use for your competency management system, for sure.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks.
If I just add to what Frans is saying there, because obviously there is a lot of technology, things are changing quickly, but actually the competence management system is giving people the skills to handle that and to manage that. And it's the same, I would put the same with the company SMS as well, safety management system, because when you're introducing new technology or you're making a change in the way that the company's going to operate, you would need to look at your fundamentals, and part of that is the SMS. And one of the things that competency management systems do is give people the confidence to challenge, give them the confidence to say, well, actually, that's not what we really do. And one of the things that I know Frans will have the evidence for this is that under the SIRE regime, one of the things that comes up time and time again is that the process that actually happens on board doesn't match with what the procedure says. And that's because people think, well, oh yeah, that's the SMS. That's not really, that's a company thing. I haven't got the authority to challenge that or to change it, whatever. But they do. They do. Yeah. And that's so I think one of the, if you like, unsung benefits of it is that people feel they're much more engaged with the whole way that the company works.
And I think one of the other things that just I'd like to add into this is to the question that I gave to Frans that Carl posed. Once we identified the need of managing better behavioral competencies, you create the framework that allows you to get to that. And I think it's about that needs analysis as a business. What do my people need to do and understand, be able to kind of do confidently? If that has a big technology component, then you can bring that into a competency management system for sure. And I think, Andy, a lot of the work that you're doing on new fuels, for example, we're going to see much more of that kind of blend, much more dependency on working with specific equipment and that kind of thing. I don't know if there's anything further that you want to say to that, Andy, the work on, say, hydrogen, methanol, ammonia, those kind of things you're working on.
Yeah, and obviously a lot of people are very concerned about, what will happen. If you mention hydrogen, people think of Hindenburg. You mention ammonia, people think, oh, it's going to kill me and it's going to kill all life and what have you. So obviously people have very important and deeply felt concerns about it. And the way that the subject's been approached by different working parties, of which I'm a member, is that safety is the absolute priority. It's the number one. But it's about actually helping people to understand, giving them the competencies. So it's identifying what competence do they need to work with in this new environment and in this new framework. And again, you go through that. Well, what's different about this? I can come back to your needs analysis. How will people be expected to think differently, for example? So an example of that is everyone in the maritime industry knows when you've got a fire, you close the fire dampers and you stop air coming in and you put on CO2 systems or high mist systems or whatever. Except in a hydrogen fire, you won't necessarily do that. You might actually ventilate the space. It's a completely different way of thinking. So, you've got to make people aware of.
I've realised I've started a fire of my own there, which I certainly shouldn't have done as we close out to get into that. But I think it speaks to Frans's point, right? That it's not finished. It's something that you adjust and that you do. And as new things come in, I've got one question. I've probably got time for one question there, just directly to you, John, which is like competent professionals at sea as well as shore, as Seapeak map competencies for bringing officers into shore-based positions.
Yes, we do. Our career development officers they conduct a survey regularly, annually, with officers. Some simple questions. Would you be interested in coming ashore, A, at the end of your career, B, in the next 12 months, C, in the next 24 months? And we keep a record of it. Regularly upstairs where positions come up for vessel managers, commercial operators, fleet managers even. So we spoke about it earlier. We like to keep that professionalism, that knowledge of the company within. So first port of call is generally our fleet, to see if there's any interested parties because you've invested in them, you've spent a lot of money, and they know the people, they know the ships. It just makes sense.
Thank you. That's all we got time for, I'm afraid. I think we answered most of the questions. We'll have a look, see if there was a couple of specific ones we'll come back to you on. James, we do have a resource available for you as well. If you just pop us along to the last slide. There is a resource which we produced, which kind of gives you tips and tricks in how to implement a CMS and the different things. A lot of the things we talked about today, you will find in there, and you can download it. There's a QR code, or we can send you a link in the follow-up email. The recording will be shared as well. So it just leaves me to thank these wonderful gentlemen here for spending time with us today, and to thank all of you for spending an hour with us to talk about this great topic. So, James, over to you just to wrap up.
Thanks very much, Raal, and thanks very much to John, Andy and Frans as well for a fantastic, very, very interesting session. I hope everybody else shares that opinion. As Raal did mention, I will be sending out a link to the recording for yourself or for any colleagues who may be interested. The QR code is up on the screen for this resource. I'll send a link out to you for that, so it'll be quite a packed email, so watch out for that one. Just to let people know, whether it's sort of suited to everybody watching this, I don't know, but just a heads up that we have our OLP learning dashboards waitlist available to join now. So we have launched this very recently, and once again, you'll be unsurprised to know that I will send you a link in your next email. We do have a couple of webinars featuring this available next week, next Tuesday and next Wednesday. So there's a couple of sessions to choose from where we'll demonstrate the software and have a look at its capabilities. QR code on the screen to have a look at the web page and join the waitlist for this as well. So further details to follow. But again, as Raal said, I'd just like to echo, thank you very much for your time. We really do appreciate the support, and we hope you've all managed to take something away from the session. So thanks again to the presenters. Thanks to everybody for joining, and we hope to speak to you soon. Goodbye.
Goodbye, everyone.
Thanks, guys.